The colony of New Horizon was a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Founded over a century ago by a group of pioneering settlers, it had grown into a thriving hub of scientific research and technological innovation. At the heart of this colony stood the Williamson Research Institute, home to some of the brightest minds in the Terran colonies. Leading this elite team of scientists was Dr. Emily Williamson, a brilliant astrophysicist whose groundbreaking work in quantum mechanics and energy manipulation had earned her a reputation as one of the most innovative thinkers in the known galaxy. Despite her accolades, Emily remained humble and driven, always seeking new ways to push the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. As the Rachnar invasion force approached, Emily knew that the colony's only hope for survival lay in the advanced technologies being developed within the Institute's labs. She quickly assembled her top researchers and engineers, urgently tasking them with reverse engineering any alien artifacts they could get their hands on. "We don't have much time," Emily said, her brow furrowed with determination. "The Rachnar will be here within the next 48 hours. If we're going to have any chance of defending this colony, we need to find a way to level the playing field." Her team sprang into action, working around the clock to unravel the secrets of the Rachnar's advanced weaponry and shielding systems. Meanwhile, Emily herself oversaw the development of a network of autonomous drones, programmed to disrupt enemy communications and targeting systems. As the Rachnar ships drew closer, the colony's defense forces prepared for the inevitable onslaught. Colonel James Hoffman, the grizzled veteran tasked with commanding the colony's meager military, knew that his troops were outmatched in every way. The Rachnar's superior numbers and firepower would easily overwhelm the human defenders. "We're sitting ducks out here, Doctor," Hoffman said grimly, as he reviewed the latest intel with Emily. "My men are good, but they're not miracle workers. If we don't come up with something soon, this colony is as good as gone." Emily's eyes narrowed, her mind racing as she considered their options. "We may not be able to match the Rachnar's brute force," she replied, "but I think we can still turn this to our advantage. Tell your men to hang back and let the Rachnar make the first move. I have a plan, but it's going to require perfect timing and a lot of luck." Hoffman hesitated, clearly skeptical of Emily's bold strategy. "With all due respect, Doctor, we don't have the luxury of relying on luck. This isn't some academic exercise. These are lives at stake." "I understand your concerns, Colonel," Emily said calmly. "But I promise you, if we execute this plan correctly, we can not only survive the Rachnar assault, but we can also turn the tide of this invasion. Trust me on this." Reluctantly, Hoffman nodded. He knew that Emily's track record of success spoke for itself, and if anyone could devise a way to overcome the Rachnar's overwhelming might, it was her. As the colony's defense systems were activated and the civilian population began their evacuation to the underground shelters, Emily and her team made the final preparations for their risky gambit. They had managed to reverse engineer a number of Rachnar technologies, including sophisticated energy weapons and a network of cloaked defensive drones. "All right, people, listen up," Emily addressed her team. "The Rachnar will be arriving in less than 12 hours. I need everyone to be ready to deploy their assigned systems the moment I give the signal. This is our only chance to catch these bastards off guard and give our colony a fighting chance." Her scientists and engineers nodded, their faces set with determined resolve. They knew the stakes were high, but they also shared Emily's unwavering belief in humanity's ability to overcome even the most daunting challenges. As the Rachnar ships emerged from FTL just outside the colony's orbit, the human defenders took their positions, bracing for the impending onslaught. Colonel Hoffman's troops manned the colony's remaining defenses, while Emily and her team anxiously monitored the alien vessel's movements from the command center. "Here they come," Hoffman said, his voice grim. "God help us all." Emily took a deep breath, her fingers poised over the control console. "Not yet, Colonel," she replied, her eyes narrowing with fierce concentration. "Wait for my mark." The Rachnar warships descended upon the colony of New Horizon, their massive weapons batteries unleashing a devastating barrage of energy blasts and plasma torpedoes. The human defenders braced themselves as the colony's shields strained under the intense bombardment. Colonel Hoffman watched helplessly as the Rachnar's display of overwhelming firepower tore through the colony's defenses. "We're not going to last much longer, Doctor," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "If we don't do something soon, we're all dead." Emily's brow furrowed in concentration as she monitored the battle unfolding on the holo displays. "Trust me, Colonel," she replied, her fingers flying across the control console. "The time is almost right. Just hold on a little longer." Suddenly, a series of blinding flashes erupted across the Rachnar fleet, causing the alien vessels to falter and their weapons to go dark. Hoffman's eyes widened in surprise as he watched the invading ships struggle to regain control. "What the hell just happened?" he exclaimed. "My network of defensive drones," Emily said, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "They've just disrupted the Rachnar's targeting and communication systems. Now's our chance." Hoffman didn't need to be told twice. He immediately ordered his troops to unleash a barrage of the colony's newly developed energy weapons, targeting the vulnerable Rachnar ships. The alien vessels, unable to coordinate their defenses, were pummeled by the concentrated human onslaught. Aboard the Rachnar flagship, the commander watched in stunned disbelief as his invasion force was thrown into chaos. "Impossible," he roared, slamming his fist against the armrest of his chair. "How dare these pathetic humans defy the might of the Rachnar Empire?" His subordinates frantically worked to restore their systems, but the damage done by the human drones proved to be more extensive than they had anticipated. The Rachnar commander gritted his teeth, realizing that his carefully planned invasion had hit an unexpected snag. "Order all ships to focus their fire on those drones," he commanded. "Once we've neutralized their defenses, we'll crush the humans with our full might." Back on the ground, Emily and her team monitored the battle with a mixture of triumph and trepidation. They knew that the Rachnar would soon adapt to their tactics, and the colony's defenses would be sorely tested. "Colonel, tell your men to keep up the pressure," Emily said, her eyes fixed on the holo displays. "We need to buy as much time as possible before the Rachnar figure out a way to counter our drones." Hoffman nodded, relaying the orders to his troops. The human defenders poured everything they had into the fight, their energy weapons carving deep gashes into the Rachnar ships. But as the minutes ticked by, the alien vessels began to regain their coordination, their attacks growing more precise and devastating. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated," Emily muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to find another way to slow them down." Suddenly, an idea struck her. She turned to her team, her eyes alight with determination. "Listen up, everyone. I need you to start modifying our energy weapons to create targeted EMP bursts. We're going to hit the Rachnar fleet with a coordinated electromagnetic pulse and see if we can't fry their systems again." Her scientists sprang into action, recalibrating the weapon systems while Emily coordinated with Colonel Hoffman to time the attack. As the Rachnar ships moved in for another bombardment, the human defenders unleashed a devastating volley of EMP-enhanced energy blasts, striking the alien vessels with pinpoint accuracy. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Rachnar. Their ships were suddenly plunged into darkness, their advanced systems rendered useless by the powerful electromagnetic pulses. Alarms blared throughout the fleet as the commander desperately tried to regain control. No, this cannot be happening," he roared, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "Our technology is superior to these primitive humans. How dare they defy us in this way?" On the ground, the human defenders cheered as they watched the Rachnar ships struggle to maintain their positions. Emily allowed herself a small smile, knowing that their gambit had paid off. "Keep the pressure on, Colonel," she said, her voice calm and measured. "Don't let them recover. We need to force them to retreat." Hoffman needed no further encouragement. He ordered his troops to unleash a relentless barrage of energy blasts and missile strikes, targeting the now vulnerable Ragnar ships. The alien vessels, unable to mount an effective counterattack, began to break formation and retreat. "They're running," one of the human soldiers shouted, his face alight with triumph. The Ragnar commander, his pride shattered, was forced to make the agonizing decision to order a full retreat. As his damaged ships limped away, he vowed to return with even greater force, determined to crush the defiant human colony. Back in the command center, Emily and her team watched the retreating Ragnar fleet, their expressions a mix of relief and resolve. "This is only the beginning," Emily said, her eyes narrowing. "The Ragnar will be back, and we need to be ready." In the aftermath of the Ragnar's hasty retreat, the colony of New Horizon was left battered but defiant. Colonel Hoffman's troops had managed to hold the line, thanks in large part to the ingenious tactics and advanced technologies developed by Dr. Emily Williamson and her team. As the colony's civilians began the arduous process of rebuilding, Emily convened an emergency meeting with her top scientists and engineers. "The Ragnar will be back, and in greater numbers," she said, her expression grim. "We can't afford to rest on our laurels. We need to find a way to give our people an even greater advantage in the next confrontation." Her team nodded in agreement, their minds already whirring with ideas. They had witnessed firsthand the devastating power of the Ragnar's advanced weaponry, and they knew that they would need to push the boundaries of human technology even further to have a chance of victory. "We've managed to reverse engineer a significant portion of the Ragnar's technology," one of the scientists, Dr. Lily Chen, reported. "Their energy weapons, shielding systems, and even some of their propulsion components. If we can integrate these into our own designs, we may be able to tip the scales in our favor." Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. "Excellent work, Lily. I want you and your team to prioritize that integration process. We need to have those new systems ready for deployment as soon as possible." As the scientists dispersed to their respective labs, Emily turned to Colonel Hoffman, who had been observing the meeting in silence. "What about our ground forces, Colonel?" she asked. "Do we have any ideas on how to enhance their capabilities?" Hoffman rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "We've been working on a prototype exoskeleton system that could give our troops a significant boost in strength and mobility, but the power requirements have been a major challenge." "Then we'll make it a priority to solve that problem," Emily replied. "I want those exoskeletons ready for field testing as soon as possible. We need to be able to match the Ragnar's ground forces, or we'll be overrun." Hoffman nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll get my best engineers on it right away, Doctor. We can't afford to let the Ragnar catch us off guard again." Over the next few weeks, the colony of New Horizon became a hive of frenzied activity as Emily's team worked tirelessly to prepare for the Ragnar's inevitable return. The integration of alien technologies into their own weapon systems and defense platforms progressed rapidly, and the prototype exoskeletons were field-tested with impressive results. As the colony's defenses were reinforced, Emily also reached out to other Terran settlements, seeking to build a network of allies and share the knowledge they had gained. "The Ragnar are a threat to all of us," she said during a video conference with the leaders of nearby colonies. "We need to stand united if we have any hope of defeating them." The other colony leaders were initially skeptical, having heard the tales of the Ragnar's unstoppable might. But as Emily presented the evidence of their success against the alien invaders, their doubts began to fade, and they pledged their support. "If you can give us the tools to fight the Ragnar," one of the leaders said, "then we'll be more than happy to lend our troops and resources to the cause." Emily smiled, her eyes shining with determination. "Excellent. Then let's get to work." As the Ragnar ships reappeared on the colony sensors, the human defenders were ready. The newly upgraded energy weapons and shielding systems were deployed, and the exoskeleton-clad troops stood at the ready, their faces set with grim determination. When the Ragnar forces descended upon the colony, they were met with a barrage of firepower that caught them completely off guard. The human energy weapons, supercharged by the reverse-engineered alien technology, tore through the Ragnar ships with ease, their powerful shields faltering under the intense bombardment. On the ground, the Ragnar troops found themselves outmatched by the enhanced human soldiers, their powerful exoskeletons giving them a significant advantage in speed, strength, and mobility. The aliens' advanced weaponry proved to be no match for the humans' adaptability and ingenuity. Aboard the Ragnar flagship, the commander watched in growing horror as his invasion force was systematically dismantled by the determined human defenders. "Impossible," he roared, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "How have these primitives managed to acquire such formidable technology?" His subordinates scrambled to adjust their tactics, but the damage was already done. The human countermeasures had proven to be devastatingly effective, and the Ragnar's once invincible assault was reduced to a desperate struggle for survival. As the battle raged on, Emily and her team continued to coordinate the human forces, their strategies evolving with each new development. They had learned from their previous encounter, and they were determined to ensure that the Ragnar would not be able to adapt as quickly this time. Finally, with their ships crippled and their ground troops in full retreat, the Ragnar commander was forced to make the humiliating decision to order a full withdrawal. As his battered fleet limped away, he vowed to return with even greater force, determined to crush the insolent humans once and for all. Back in the colony's command center, Emily and her team watched the retreating Ragnar ships, their expressions a mix of triumph and apprehension. "They'll be back," Emily said, her voice low. "But next time, we'll be ready." In the aftermath of their second defeat, the Ragnar commander was consumed by a burning rage. How could these insignificant human colonists have dared to defy the might of the Ragnar Empire? His pride and confidence had been shattered, and he was determined to exact a heavy price for this humiliation. Summoning his top lieutenants, the commander laid out a new strategy, one that would leave the humans with no choice but to surrender. "We will not give them the chance to adapt to our tactics again," the commander snarled. "This time, we will overwhelm them with such devastating force that they will have no choice but to submit." His subordinates listened with a mix of trepidation and resolve. They had witnessed firsthand the humans' uncanny ability to overcome even the most daunting challenges, and they knew that underestimating their foe would be a fatal mistake. "What do you have in mind, sir?" one of the lieutenants asked cautiously. The commander's lips curled into a malicious grin. "Biological weapons," he declared. "The humans may be able to withstand our conventional attacks, but let us see how they fare against a plague that will ravage their precious colony." As the Ragnar fleet prepared to launch their devastating biological assault, Emily and her team were working tirelessly to fortify the colony's defenses. They had anticipated that the Ragnar would return, and they were determined to be ready. "We've managed to establish communication with several other Terran colonies," Emily reported to Colonel Hoffman. "They've agreed to lend us their support, both in terms of manpower and resources. If we can coordinate our efforts, we may be able to turn the tide of this invasion for good." Hoffman nodded, his expression grim. "That's good to hear, Doctor. But we can't afford to let our guard down. The Ragnar are a ruthless enemy, and I'm sure they're cooking up something even more devastating than what we faced before." Emily's brow furrowed with concern. "I'm afraid you're right, Colonel. Our intelligence network has picked up some disturbing chatter from the Ragnar fleet. It seems they're planning to unleash some kind of biological weapon on the colony." Hoffman's eyes widened with alarm. "Biological weapons? Damn it, we need to get the civilians evacuated immediately." "Wait, Colonel," Emily said, raising a hand to stop him. "I've been working on a countermeasure. We've managed to reverse engineer a significant portion of the Ragnar's biotechnology, and I believe we can use it to neutralize their biological weapon." Hoffman stared at her, his expression a mix of skepticism and hope. "Are you sure about this, Doctor? The lives of everyone in this colony are at stake." "I'm certain, Colonel," Emily replied, her voice steady and confident. "But we'll need to act quickly. The Ragnar will be launching their attack within the next 48 hours. Mobilizing her team, Emily set to work on the development of the countermeasure. They worked around the clock, using their advanced knowledge of xenobiology and genetic engineering to create a powerful antidote that could neutralize the Rachnar's deadly pathogen. As the Rachnar fleet approached the colony, the human defenders stood ready, their weapons primed and their defenses fortified. But this time, they also had a secret weapon, a network of drones equipped with the antidote, ready to be deployed the moment the Rachnar launched their biological assault. When the alien ships opened fire, raining down a relentless barrage of energy blasts and plasma missiles, the humans responded in kind, their enhanced energy weapons cutting through the Rachnar's defenses with ease. But just as the Rachnar commander was about to order the release of his biological weapon, Emily gave the signal. The drones sprang into action, swarming the Rachnar ships and unleashing a dense cloud of the antidote. The alien commander watched in horror as his carefully crafted weapon was neutralized, the pathogen rendered harmless before it could be deployed. "Impossible," he roared, slamming his fist against the armrest of his chair. How could these humans have anticipated our attack? Back on the ground, the human defenders cheered as they watched the Rachnar's biological assault fail. But their triumph was short-lived, as the alien commander quickly shifted his focus to more devastating tactics. "If they can withstand our biological weapons, then we'll simply have to escalate our bombardment," the commander growled, his eyes narrowing with malice. The Rachnar ships began to rain down a barrage of devastating orbital strikes, their powerful plasma cannons decimating the colony's surface defenses. Emily and her team watched in horror as the human forces struggled to keep up with the relentless onslaught. "We can't hold out much longer, Doctor," Hoffman said, his voice tinged with desperation. "If we don't find a way to break their siege, we're all going to be dead." Emily's mind raced as she considered their options. They had managed to counter the Rachnar's biological weapon, but their sheer firepower was proving to be too much for the human defenses to withstand. "Wait, that's it," she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with a sudden realization. "Colonel, I need you to order your men to fall back. We're going to try something risky, but it might be our only chance." Hoffman hesitated, clearly skeptical of Emily's plan, but the desperation in her voice convinced him to trust her judgment. As the human forces retreated to the colony's underground bunkers, the Rachnar commander smiled, believing that he had finally broken the will of the stubborn human defenders. But little did he know that Emily and her team had one more trick up their sleeve. As the Rachnar ships continued their relentless bombardment of the colony, the human defenders had retreated underground, taking shelter in the fortified bunkers that had been hastily constructed in preparation for this very scenario. Colonel Hoffman paced nervously in the command center, his brow furrowed with worry. "I hope you know what you're doing, Doctor," he said, casting a sidelong glance at Emily. "If this doesn't work, we're all as good as dead." Emily met his gaze with steely determination. "It has to work, Colonel," she replied, her voice calm and measured. "We don't have any other choice." The scientist's fingers flew across the control console, coordinating the final preparations for their daring gambit. If everything went according to plan, they would be able to turn the tide of the battle and perhaps even force the Rachnar to retreat once again. Outside, the Rachnar commander watched with growing satisfaction as the human defenses crumbled under the weight of his overwhelming firepower. "Fools," he spat, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "They should have surrendered when they had the chance." Suddenly, a series of blinding flashes erupted across the Rachnar fleet, causing the alien vessels to falter and their weapons to go dark. The commander's eyes widened in shock as he realized that his ships had been hit by a powerful electromagnetic pulse. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, his voice laced with fury. "Who dares to defy the might of the Rachnar Empire?" Back in the colony's command center, Emily allowed herself a small smile. "Now, Colonel," she said, her fingers tapping out a rapid sequence of commands. Hoffman nodded, quickly relaying the orders to his troops. Within moments, the human defenders emerged from their underground bunkers, their newly upgraded energy weapons primed and ready. The Rachnar ships, crippled by the devastating EMP, were unable to mount an effective counterattack as the humans unleashed a barrage of devastating energy blasts, targeting the alien vessels with pinpoint accuracy. Impossible, the Ragnar commander screamed, watching helplessly as his once mighty fleet was slowly torn apart. How could these insignificant humans possess such power? Emily's plan had worked to perfection. By luring the Ragnar into a false sense of security, she had managed to catch them off guard with a carefully timed EMP strike. And now, with their ships rendered largely helpless, the human defenders were able to unleash the full force of their enhanced firepower. As the battle raged on, the Ragnar commander desperately tried to rally his remaining ships, but the damage was already done. The human energy weapons cut through the aliens' weakened defenses with ease, leaving the Ragnar fleet in a state of disarray. Finally, with his ships crippled and his forces in full retreat, the Ragnar commander was forced to make the agonizing decision to order a hasty withdrawal. "We will return, humans," he snarled, his voice laced with bitter rage. "And next time, you will not be so fortunate." As the Ragnar fleet limped away, the human defenders cheered, their faces alight with triumph. But Emily's expression remained somber, her mind already racing with the implications of their victory. "This is only the beginning, Colonel," she said, turning to Hoffman. "The Ragnar will be back, and they will be more determined than ever to crush us. We need to start preparing for their next assault immediately." Hoffman nodded, his own expression grim. "I'll get my best troops mobilized, Doctor, and I'll make sure the other colonies are ready to lend their support as well." Emily reached out and placed a hand on the colonel's shoulder. "Thank you, James," she said, her voice soft. "I couldn't have done this without you and your men." Hoffman offered her a wry smile. "Don't thank me yet, Emily. We still have a long way to go before we can consider ourselves safe from the Ragnar's wrath." As the colony began the process of rebuilding and reinforcing its defenses, Emily and her team worked tirelessly to analyze the data gathered from the battle. They needed to understand the Ragnar's tactics and technology even better if they were going to stand a chance against the next wave of the alien invasion. "We can't afford to let our guard down," Emily told her colleagues, her eyes burning with determination. "The Ragnar will be back, and they will be angrier than ever. We need to be ready." The scientists and engineers nodded in agreement, their own resolve hardening as they realized the gravity of the situation. They had tasted victory against the formidable Ragnar, but they knew that the real fight was yet to come. In the depths of space, the Ragnar commander nursed his wounded pride, his mind consumed by thoughts of vengeance. He would not underestimate the humans again. This time, he would bring the full might of the Ragnar Empire to bear, and he would not stop until the colony of New Horizon was reduced to ashes. As the Ragnar fleet limped away from the battered colony of New Horizon, the commander's rage was palpable. He had never imagined that these insignificant humans would be capable of such defiance, let alone orchestrating a series of devastating defeats against the might of the Ragnar Empire. Back on the Ragnar homeworld, the commander presented his findings to the Empire's High Council, his claws clenching with fury as he recounted the humiliating losses. "These humans have managed to reverse engineer our advanced technologies and weaponry," he growled, his eyes narrowing. "They have shown an uncanny ability to adapt and overcome our tactics. We cannot underestimate them any longer." The council members exchanged troubled glances, their own pride and confidence shaken by the startling revelations. "This is unacceptable," one of the council elders hissed. "The Ragnar Empire has never been challenged in this way. We must annihilate these humans before they pose a threat to our entire civilization." The commander nodded, his expression grim. "I have already begun preparations for a massive counteroffensive. But to ensure our success, we will need to divert resources from other campaigns and colonies." The council members fell silent, their brows furrowed with concern. The prospect of redirecting precious assets from their ongoing conquests was a difficult decision, one that could have far-reaching consequences throughout the Ragnar Empire. "What guarantee do we have that this will not end in another humiliating defeat?" a younger council member asked, his voice laced with skepticism. The commander's lips curled into a humorless smile. "I have learned from our previous mistakes," he said, his claws tapping against the armrest of his chair. "This time, we will not underestimate the humans. We will overwhelm them with such devastating force that they will have no choice but to submit." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, but ultimately they recognized the necessity of restoring the Ragnar's dominance. With a reluctant nod, they granted the commander the resources he had requested, trusting that he would not fail them again. As the Ragnar fleet began its preparations for the impending invasion, the humans of New Horizon were also hard at work, bolstering their defenses and forging new alliances. Emily Williamson, her brow furrowed with worry, gathered her team of scientists and engineers. "The Ragnar will be back," she said, her voice grave. "And this time, they won't be holding anything back." Her colleagues nodded solemnly, their expressions mirroring the weight of the situation. "We've managed to establish communication with several other Terran colonies," one of the scientists, Dr. Lily Chen, reported. "They've agreed to lend us their support, both in terms of manpower and resources." Emily's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. "Excellent. We'll need every advantage we can get if we're going to stand a chance against the Ragnar's next assault." Turning to Colonel Hoffman, Emily continued, "James, I need you to coordinate with the other colonies and ensure that their troops are ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. We can't afford any gaps in our defenses." Hoffman nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll get right on it, Doctor. We'll be ready for them. I can promise you that." As the preparations continued, Emily and her team delved deeper into their research, determined to find new and innovative ways to counter the Ragnar's formidable technology. "If we can disrupt their supply lines and communication networks, it might give us the edge we need," Emily mused, her fingers tapping against the console. Her colleagues eagerly set to work, their minds buzzing with ideas and strategies. They knew that the stakes were higher than ever, and failure was simply not an option. In the depths of space, the Ragnar fleet began its relentless advance, its ships bristling with an array of devastating weaponry. The commander's eyes narrowed with unbridled determination as he surveyed the vastness of the void, his claws flexing with anticipation. "This time, the humans will not escape," he growled, his voice laced with malice. "We will crush them, and their pitiful colony will be reduced to ashes." As the Ragnar ships drew closer to their target, the human defenders of New Horizon braced themselves for the impending onslaught. They had learned from their previous encounters, and they were determined to give the Ragnar a fight they would never forget. "We can do this," Emily said, her voice filled with resolve as she addressed her team. "We've come too far to give up now. The fate of our entire civilization rests on our shoulders, and we cannot fail." Her colleagues nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew that the battle ahead would be the most crucial one yet, and they were ready to do whatever it took to protect their home and their way of life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy as the human defenders of New Horizon prepared to face the full might of the Ragnar Empire. As the massive Ragnar fleet approached the colony of New Horizon, the human defenders braced themselves for the impending onslaught. They had spent weeks fortifying their defenses, bolstering their alliances with neighboring Terran colonies, and perfecting their strategies to counter the alien invaders. In the command center, Emily Williamson stood alongside Colonel Hoffman, her eyes narrowed with determination. "This is it, James," she said, her voice steady. "Everything we've been working for comes down to this moment." Hoffman nodded, his weathered features etched with resolve. "My troops are ready, Doctor. We're not going to let the Ragnar take this colony without one hell of a fight." The Ragnar ships emerged from the void, their weapons bristling with deadly firepower. The commander, his pride still stinging from the previous defeats, had spared no expense in assembling this formidable armada. "Prepare to unleash the full might of the Ragnar Empire," the commander growled, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "This time, there will be no escape for the humans." As the alien vessels opened fire, the human defenders responded with a barrage of their own, their enhanced energy weapons carving gashes through the Ragnar shields. But the sheer volume of the Ragnar's assault was overwhelming, and the colony's defenses began to buckle under the relentless bombardment. "They're breaking through our lines," Hoffman shouted, his brow furrowed with concern. "We need to pull back and regroup." Emily's mind raced as she studied the battle unfolding before her. "No, Colonel," she replied, her voice calm and resolute. "We need to hold our position. I have a plan, but it's going to require perfect timing and a lot of luck." Hoffman hesitated, his doubts clear on his face. "Doctor, with all due respect, we're barely holding on as it is. I can't risk my men on some risky gambit." "Trust me, James," Emily said, her gaze unwavering. "This is our best chance to turn the tide of this battle. Just give me a little more time." Hoffman let out a frustrated sigh, but nodded nonetheless. He knew that Emily's instincts had been right in the past, and he couldn't afford to ignore her now, not when the fate of the colony hung in the balance. As the Ragnar ships continued their relentless assault, Emily and her team worked furiously to enact their daring plan. They had spent weeks studying the aliens' communication and supply networks, and now they were ready to put their knowledge to the test. Carefully coordinating with the other Terran colonies, the humans launched a series of targeted strikes, disrupting the Ragnar's supply lines and communication channels. The alien vessels, suddenly cut off from their support and unable to coordinate their attacks, began to falter. "What is the meaning of this?" the Ragnar commander roared, watching helplessly as his invasion force descended into chaos. "How dare these humans interfere with the operations of the Ragnar Empire?" Back in the command center, Emily allowed herself a small smile. "Now, Colonel," she said, her fingers flying across the control console. Hoffman nodded, his troops surging forward with renewed vigor. The human energy weapons tore through the Ragnar's weakened defenses, crippling their ships and forcing them to retreat. As the alien fleet limped away, the human defenders cheered, their faces alight with triumph. But Emily's expression remained somber, her mind already racing with the implications of their hard-won victory. "This is only the beginning, Colonel," she said, turning to Hoffman. "The Ragnar will be back, and they will be more determined than ever to crush us. We need to start preparing for their next assault immediately." Hoffman nodded, his own expression grim. "I'll get my best troops mobilized, Doctor, and I'll make sure the other colonies are ready to lend their support as well." Emily reached out and placed a hand on the colonel's shoulder. "Thank you, James," she said, her voice soft. "I couldn't have done this without you and your men." Hoffman offered her a wry smile. "Don't thank me yet, Emily. We still have a long way to go before we can consider ourselves safe from the Ragnar's wrath." As the colony began the process of rebuilding and reinforcing its defenses, Emily and her team worked tirelessly to analyze the data gathered from the battle. They needed to understand the Ragnar's tactics and technology even better if they were going to stand a chance against the next wave of the alien invasion. But unbeknownst to the humans, the Ragnar Empire was already beginning to unravel from within. The commander's failures had eroded the trust and confidence of the High Council, and the strain of diverting resources to the campaign against New Horizon had rippled through the Empire's other colonies. In the shadows, a growing resistance movement began to take shape, fueled by the Ragnar's own conquered peoples who had grown weary of the Empire's tyrannical rule. They had heard the tales of the human defenders of New Horizon and their defiant stand against the invincible Ragnar, and they saw an opportunity to strike back against their oppressors. As the Ragnar commander prepared to launch his next assault, he was unaware of the cracks that were forming in the foundations of his once mighty empire. The humans of New Horizon had proven that they were more than just a nuisance. They were a beacon of hope for those who dared to defy the Ragnar's iron grip. The stage was set for a showdown that would shake the very fabric of the galaxy as the human defenders of New Horizon prepared to face the Ragnar's final desperate gambit. as the Ragnar commander prepared to launch his final desperate assault on the colony of New Horizon. He was unaware of the cracks that were forming within his own empire. The humans' resilience and ingenuity had not only thwarted his previous attempts at conquest, but they had also inspired a growing resistance movement among the Ragnar's own conquered peoples. In the shadows, whispers of the human defenders' defiant stand against the invincible Ragnar Empire had spread like wildfire, kindling the embers of rebellion across the galaxy. The commander's failures had eroded the trust and confidence of the High Council, and the strain of diverting resources to the campaign against New Horizon had rippled through the Empire's other colonies, leaving them vulnerable. But the commander, blinded by his own pride and thirst for vengeance, refused to see the signs of the Empire's impending collapse. He had assembled a formidable fleet, equipped with the latest in Ragnar technology and weaponry, and he was determined to crush the human colony once and for all. As the alien vessels approached the battered but resolute defenses of New Horizon, Emily Williamson and her team watched with a mix of apprehension and resolve. "This is it, Colonel," Emily said, her eyes fixed on the holo displays. "The Ragnar have thrown everything they have at us. If we can't stop them here, I don't know if we'll get another chance." Hoffman nodded, his expression grim. "My troops are ready, Doctor. We won't go down without a fight." The Ragnar commander's ships unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma missiles and energy beams, hammering the colony's shields with relentless fury. The human defenders responded in kind, their enhanced weapons carving deep gashes into the alien vessels. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the Ragnar's sheer firepower was beginning to overwhelm the human defenses. Hoffman's troops fought with unwavering courage, but they were slowly being pushed back, their lines crumbling under the weight of the alien onslaught. "We can't hold them off much longer, Emily," Hoffman shouted, his voice laced with frustration. "If we don't do something soon, we're all going to be dead." Emily's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide of the battle. Suddenly, an idea struck her, and her eyes narrowed with determination. "Colonel, tell your men to fall back to the secondary defense line," she said, her fingers flying across the control console. "I got one more trick up my sleeve, but it's going to be risky." Hoffman hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. "Doctor, are you sure about this? If it doesn't work—" "Just trust me, James," Emily interrupted, her voice firm. "We don't have any other choice." Reluctantly, Hoffman relayed the orders to his troops, watching as they fell back to the colony's inner defenses. As the Ragnar forces surged forward, sensing victory, Emily and her team prepared to unleash their final counterstrike. Aboard the Ragnar flagship, the commander watched with growing anticipation as his troops closed in on the human colony. "At last, the humans will be crushed," he growled, his clawed hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "Nothing can stop the might of the Ragnar Empire." But as the alien vessels approached the colony's inner perimeter, a series of blinding flashes erupted across the Ragnar fleet, causing the ships to falter and their weapons to go dark. The commander's eyes widened with shock as he realized that his forces had been hit by a devastating electromagnetic pulse. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared, slamming his fist against the console. "Who dares to defy the Ragnar Empire in this way?" Back on the ground, Emily allowed herself a small smile. "Now, Colonel," she said, her voice calm and composed. Hoffman nodded, his troops surging forward with renewed vigor. The human energy weapons, supercharged by the EMP blast, tore through the Ragnar's weakened defenses, crippling their ships and leaving them helpless. The Ragnar commander watched in horror as his carefully orchestrated invasion crumbled before his eyes. "No, this cannot be happening," he screamed, his claws tearing at the armrests of his chair. "We are the Ragnar, the invincible conquerors of the galaxy. How dare these insignificant humans defeat us?" As the Ragnar fleet struggled to regroup, the human defenders launched a relentless barrage of attacks, systematically dismantling the alien vessels one by one. The commander, his pride shattered, was forced to make the agonizing decision to order a full retreat. "We will return, humans," he snarled, his voice laced with bitter rage. "And next time, you will not be so fortunate." But as the Ragnar ships limped away, the commander's words rang hollow, for he had failed to see the cracks that had been forming within his own empire, cracks that the humans of New Horizon had exploited to their advantage. In the shadows, the resistance movement that had been quietly gathering strength suddenly burst into the open, seizing the opportunity to strike back against their Ragnar overlords. Across the galaxy, the conquered peoples rose up, their voices united in a cry for freedom. The Ragnar commander, his once mighty empire crumbling around him, was forced to divert precious resources to quell the growing rebellion, leaving him unable to focus on the threat posed by the human colony of New Horizon. Back on the ground, Emily and her team watched the retreating Ragnar fleet, their expressions a mix of triumph and resolve. "This is only the beginning, Colonel," Emily said, her eyes narrowing. "The Ragnar may have been pushed back, but they won't give up without a fight. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us next." Hoffman nodded, his own expression grim. "Don't worry, Doctor. We're not going anywhere. This colony is ours, and we'll defend it to the last man." As the humans of New Horizon set about the task of rebuilding and reinforcing their defenses, they knew that the battle against the Ragnar was far from over. But with the growing resistance movement weakening the invincible empire from within, and the ingenuity and determination of the human defenders, they were more confident than ever that they could emerge victorious. The stage was set for a showdown that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy, as the humans of New Horizon prepared to take the fight to the Ragnar Empire itself.